Welcome, everyone, to the August 2026 Spark series. This is a long-awaited topic. Yes, you heard it. We're talking about AI agents today, the revolution of the next workforce. So I'm super excited about what we're going to dive into today. As always, if you're attending this live, you'll get a chance to interact with our panelists and ask them questions. But until then, we ask you to stay off of camera and mute so that we can really dive in with our panelists. Following that, we will open it up to you. So without further ado, my name is Diane Temple. I'm the president and CEO of the Idaho Technology Council. I've been in this role now, it's hard to believe, for 2.5 years, and super excited to bring Spark Series to our followers. And so if you're watching this later on YouTube or from our website, we hope you enjoy what you will learn today. And if you don't already follow us, definitely follow us at idahotechcouncil.org. So with that, I'm proud to introduce our panelists. I will let them tell a little bit about themselves and what their connection is in the agentic world. And then we'll jump into some fun questions. Aaron Todd Hansen, otherwise known as Jet, has been on the ITC board for many years. He pioneered the Computing Alliance, which is now the Idaho Innovation Alliance. He is such an amazing connector across the Treasure Valley and beyond. We have Roger Rolls with Bora AI. He is a brand new ITC member, and we're super excited to get to know him and hear from him today. And Ken Brook, the founder of Ad Prompt AI. So with that, Jet, we'll just go in that order, and we'll have you go first.
Oh
Welcome.
gosh. Thank you so much, Diane. You're always so kind. Just really briefly, I work for Intuit. I'm a solution lead, solution architect there, and was the first person to introduce AI for our customer success team, and then have been doing a number of things with sales, with agents, and other tools. I'm also chair of the education committee for the Idaho Technology Council. And with that, I'll pass the baton over to Roger.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. First of all, we are brand new ITC members, so I really appreciate the opportunity. Um, I'm a co-founder of Bora AI. We help businesses implement AI into their systems. Every business is a snowflake, and it's unique, and the challenges that we face in implementing AI um, vary a lot. So we help teams uh, strategize and also develop and deploy AI in their systems. I've been working in the digital space for about 13 years and have owned several businesses, and we've worked with a number of clients so far to help them sort of get on top of AI and put it to work in their business.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Happy to be here and speak with all of you. My name is Ken Brook, founder of AdPrompt. We're based right here in Boise, and we're utilizing AI and agents to not only, enhance our internal processes and workflows as a startup, but we're developing software that removes the complexities of marketing and advertising workflows for businesses of all sizes. So happy to be here. Excited to talk about this with you.
Thank you. So without further ado, we're going to just jump right in. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the AI agents, let's first define what they are, what tasks that agents are taking care of that maybe our viewers don't even realize, and then maybe just talk a little bit about that adoption rate of where we see them going, and then we'll get into some more nitty-gritty. But let's first really define what is an AI agent, and whoever would like to jump in first, jump in.
You know,
Not all.
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say
Yeah,
not all at once.
yeah.
Okay, next time I will call on you. Sorry.
Well, let me start, and then the guys, please chime in. So, you've got skills related to AI. You've got AI agents. We now have MCP connectors, and there's other levels of things as well. When I think of an agent, I'm thinking of an AI that can like act, can do stuff for you, right? And so, for example, I work a lot with the Salesforce technology at Intuit, and so for our sellers, we've set up a host of agents where we've like identified, hey, when you see someone talk about this topic, here's a bunch of actions that you can go and do, like update the opportunity to be closed one, or, go add information to this particular record. I'll pause there to see if one of the other guys wants to add to that.
Yeah, I think of, I mean, the idea of an agent, I always go to the word agency and that they can make a decision and can
Mm.
actually act upon that decision. Um, that's exactly it. It's not just chatting with you, it's actually doing something.
Yeah, just to elaborate, when I first joined the OpenAI beta, I think it was like 2021, there was a sandbox where you got to have a conversation. And it was, having a conversation with this new transformer-based large language model, and it was different. The responses, the natural language and the feeling that I got was pretty special. I used to, at that time, describe AI as a tool. Um, but that's since changed with the development and adoption and the continuous innovation in the space where AI is not just a tool, it isn't an agent with agency. It's taking actions, it is doing work for humans. Um, and that's different. It's very powerful to have, people use a chatbot to ask questions. Not only is it, giving suggestions or answering questions, under the hood, behind the scenes, underneath that chatbot, you have all of these agents working together. Each one has access to tools, skills, resources, and maybe it's specialized to do something very good. Um, and then you start to see agents discovering other agents that have maybe been trained with different data, has access to different resources and tools and skills, and collaborating autonomously. So you're starting to see these agent chains exist and working together agent to agent because now, as Jet mentioned, we have these MCP servers, we have these new standardized protocols and communication layers allowing machine, to machine conversations, agent to agent collaborations, and these agent chains to exist, to automate complex workflows that would normally take an entire team of humans. And so that's because of agents and what agents can do today.
Yeah, building on Ken's point, in software development into it, we still have like teams of engineers. I actually had a Scrum meeting this morning, but what an engineer can now do using a tool like Claude is they can have like a team of little agents, just like Ken was talking about. You can actually have an agent that specializes in like managing all the other agents, right? And
Yeah.
then the human's job then is to sort of like check in and make sure, okay, well, how is the work being broken down and how are they progressing? And, that little orchestrating agent can actually update the human, like, here's where they are. And it can actually like try and troubleshoot while the human is sleeping overnight. It's really interesting how from a work organization standpoint, it shifts what you emphasize, what you look at, and where you spend your time.
So
Yeah.
go ahead, please.
I was just going to add just real quick. So what we've done internally is we've looked at what's our desired outcome. I think it's important to understand the outcomes that you're working towards, and then understanding your own process and tools that you use to complete tasks, and then you can start to train these agents and assign the roles to complete those tasks uh, on your behalf. And so, as an example, we've completely automated our entire development process for custom software, right? We want to build a new feature. We have a whole system in place where we rapidly prototype, we test, we have quality assurance in different deployment environments, and we can automate that entire process with these agents. And it just makes us that much more efficient with what we do. And so I think having the right questions, understanding what you want to accomplish, and then starting to assign these tasks to specialized agents is something I find high performing teams are doing, and businesses that are kind of diving into this, starting to see real results for their business.
So basically, what you're describing is that it is the revolution of the next workforce. Because as you're describing different roles and responsibilities. In my mind, I'm envisioning an org chart of all of the needs a business or an organization has and who is doing what. And so I would ask probably all three of you. I know Roger, when I look at kind of what you're doing at Bora, I think about like how does a company measure whether an AI agent makes sense for them and if it's actually going to create value or if it's going to take away from that customer experience. I know that you and Ken both work with a lot of companies when you're having that question of what tasks could you move off your plate if you had an agent? I think that we're all past the, I just now have, I would say 6 months ago or a year ago, we had people engage with us that were signing up for their first Chat GPT account or their first Claude account. And we've all recognized the power of artificial intelligence. And so now we're kind of shifting in that, and myself included. I'm thinking, this is great. It's saving me time. But how do I know as an organization that it's time to go into the agentic space?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And I think it's an important question that everybody would answer differently. Like it's a very personal question for your business and for your brand and for your team and the kind of work that you're doing. Um, and that's really where it starts. The other thing, these guys are talking about how these agents can do all of these things, which is amazing. They can do all of those things, but the first step to doing a lot of that is extremely boring, and it's getting your data into a place where an agent or an AI model can actually understand it. And that part is really not very fun, and it takes a lot of planning, and you have to kind of like make sure that your data is in place. So to kind of answer that question, I mean, you need to have is the data clean? Is it accessible? Um, will it be adopted? Like, will people actually use it? Um, can you explain the output? It can't just be a black box, depending on the decisions that it's making and the processes that it's doing. If you need to explain the output of that, can you do that? And can the people operating it do it? And then also, I think time and resources is a very real consideration too. If you're trying to deploy an AI agent for a project that's due in 2 months, it takes more time than that to get your data in order, get the rules put together, train the people on how to use it, test it, and then adopt it, and then actually put it into production with confidence. Um, these are all kind of big picture questions that any organization has to go through before you actually, turn it on.
Just adding to that, at Intuit, one of the things that we did for our sellers, so we started small, and I'm sure Roger would say yes to all of these. Let me know if you disagree anywhere along the line, but we looked at the workflow. We started we started with what are the sellers trying to get done? And then once we had that sort of spelled out in like non-technology terms, we identified where are the pain points. Where's like one or two things that we could explore using agentic or similar types of solutions that might help. And so it's that baby step because there's like it's organizational change. Roger's point about you got to have clean data and who knows what the data situation is like. And so having that sort of um, targeted approach is a really good way to like help your organization figure out is this going to help us as well as if you lean into one thing, you're more likely for it to be successful. I don't know, Roger, would you add or amend any of that?
Yeah, totally. And I always like to call that like precision AI.
Hmm.
The AI or the agent doesn't have to do everything. Sometimes it's just doing like one tiny task. And if that can save a little bit of time, it can get the wheels moving and get people more comfortable. So, like in one scenario, we were helping a company that has a bunch of invoicing to do on a monthly basis. Um, and then they keep records of like all of their customers and what they're paying for in that billing cycle. And we set up an agent that actually just looks at the reference field for the invoice. That's all it does. It actually gets triggered out of Zapier when they send an invoice. It looks at the reference field in the invoice and then it just interprets within that date time. It looks at another piece of information, the calendar, and sees what they did, and then it saves it on their record. So we like that used to be a real pain point for the billing people because they'd have to do all of that manually. And now, 95% of the time, AI just deployed and just looking at the reference field for an invoice can save, hours and hours and hours of time. And it makes people feel like, hey, I got this. Okay, we have an agent, like we're doing
Uh,
something.
yeah.
And that sort of like momentum can then build, and then you start like peeking underneath all these other corners and thinking, oh, well, it could do this and this, and then maybe a couple months later it does this, and then a new tool comes out, and it's just that little precision implementation of AI that can really help grease the wheels, I think.
And I think measuring the results, you need to be able to measure how it's working. I think, really it's identifying it's easy for us to say we all need agents, let's implement agents now. But that's kind of taking the wrong approach initially. You need to identify what problems are we trying to solve? What are these pain points? So we're talking about pain points. And then to Roger's point and Jet, it's how do we make like what data and tools are needed to solve these problems? How do we address these pain points? What's necessary? Because what's happening is all of these SaaS, systems that we've used, they're becoming more agent as a service. They're implementing their own agents, and these tools and these systems are making whatever service that it provides or whatever this tool is used for is now agentically discoverable and accessible to other agents. So as we start to develop our agents, what tools and what data do we need? How do we source the data? How do we access the tools? And then start to implement the agent and then, create that process, which is agentic, and then measure the results. Also understand the human in the loop aspect of approvals. Like, what decisions can this make without human oversight? Because what's happening today is that these agents not only can take action, but they can start to spend money. And so you want to make sure that if there's certain decisions that have implications, what oversight is necessary, because you have to make sure you're including humans in the process as well in certain
Yeah.
certain certain stages.
That's a really good ad, the human in the loop role. So let's use my friend Kismet as sort of an example. Um, at Intuit, the AI that I introduced for the customer success team was specifically just for the customer support person if they were talking to Kismet. So Kismet could call in, maybe it's determined that she is at risk of leaving us, and so the AI could go determine, hey, she's paying for this feature, she's not using it, she looks like she'd be a great match for it. Customer support person, um, if it seems like a good opportunity, share that. Well, the human's going to decide if Kismet's in the right mood to actually receive that information, or even determine if like it's appropriate. Maybe it's recommending some product and she's like, that's not really her industry, so I'm not going to bring it up, right? That's an important role of like this little assistant, which is what the agent is, but still having that human with the judgment, making sure that the right thing is being done.
Yeah, I like to think of it as right. To me, it helps me understand like this idea of AI is just kind of mysterious, and having an AI agent is also mysterious for a lot of people. I like to like give it a name and give it a persona, and which we see a lot with a lot of the implementations that we see in different applications. It's like your agent will have a name. I think it helps us tangibly understand what that thing is and how it works. And I like to think of it as like an extremely smart intern that you've hired from
Yeah,
like the best university in the world, and
yeah,
they're super ambitious and they have zero experience and zero instincts.
yeah,
And it's like you tell them to go do something and they've never worked in your business before, so they just run out and do all this stuff. And sometimes they just like throw a total dud, and they do it with the most enthusiasm possible and the most information possible. But having that human in the loop that has the experience of your business and can read the room is crucial.
yeah. I always think context correction and clarification, right? So building on Ken's point, I love that analogy of like the new super smart employee. Well, you need to like, even if that was a human, like you'd want to make sure they have context for what they're supposed to try and do. If they make mistakes, call them out and ask them why did that happen? Why didn't you use
Yeah.
this? and then clarify, clarify, clarify. And with an agent, it may be you need to go in and refine the instructions behind the scenes and the way it works.
Yeah. I think we found the most success and achieved the most efficiency when the job is bounded, when the tools are clearly defined and the results are measurable. And so you have to like building teams of humans, you have to train and you have to coordinate. And so you do the same thing with agents. You have to make sure that the tasks are clearly defined, that there's like a job description, right? There's expectations, and yeah, don't be afraid to correct. If it needs to be corrected, correct it.
Yeah, another thing about the agents too, and AI in general, is that it does have a context window. And so, like, imagine this intern wakes up with amnesia every single time you give it a new task. And that's why the data and the instructions and the processes that you give it are so important because, it's getting better, and depending on what, models you're using, they have larger context. But in essence, it's like it's starting fresh every single time. And so you really have to have like your ducks in a row in your data and your instructions, and correcting it has to be. I love the idea of asking, what the reasoning is behind what an agent does, and doing a sort of a Socratic questioning about how they're working and how they're thinking as a way to influence the instructions that it gives it. So yeah, having that context portable to go from agent to agent is really important too.
So all three of you are building in this space. You fully see that agentic adoption is definitely in an upward swing, and that as you are meeting with companies, can I specifically think about you? Because everyone's trying to figure out the marketing space of how they can use AI in marketing and the agentic side and what ad prompt is building. And I know at Bora, Roger, sorry, you're meeting with companies to kind of have that dialogue. What problem are you trying to solve? And so let's pause for a moment on agents and talk about the people side. Who manages the agents? And I always like to give some, you can try this today tips in these webinars that we offer, because if I'm a small business owner running a 1 to 2 man operation, or I'm a nonprofit, as we all know, they run with a very small bandwidth. Are there specific prompts that they could ideate with or collaborate with AI to identify, one, to your point, Roger, are they even ready? Do they have their information in place? Are there some things that people could do to do a little bit of that prep work on the people side? Is my first question. The second question is, who manages the agent? I mean, when you think about turnover and employee turnover, right? If you have one human managing that agent, you know, so let's talk about that a little bit. So talk about the people side and implementation. And we can let's start with you, Jet.
Sure. There's so much that we could do there. Let me just briefly start. At Intuit, we have engineering teams which include people like me that are able to sort of translate stuff for the engineers from what the business is saying. And when we started launching Agentforce, which is a Salesforce AI solution, we realized we need a cross team. We need the business to tell us what are the sensible things to target. We need people using it to try and sleuth it out. And so we had someone techie, we had someone who sort of was like leading the project, me, and then we had user experts that could sort of validate stuff. And part of the reason that those users are important is to, like, again, sort of go, that brilliant, really smart new employees making mistakes. And one of the things I did is Salesforce allows you to build out like a test suite. Like, we could take, the AI that we created, and we can like run all these tests against it every time we make a change. And one of the interesting things we found during the beta process was, well, a seller could go in and say, hey, how much, what's the current pricing for QBO Advanced, QuickBooks Advanced? And it was pulling in the correct information. But from the test suite that I was running, I discovered that it was actually getting the answer not from the authorized Intuit source, but it was going outside some external website because we had multiple agents doing multiple things. And it was pulling in the correct number. But if we were to change the price and that website wasn't updated, a seller could be giving somebody the wrong price. And so understanding sort of the 360 realm of like what are all the things that we need to have in place is critical. And that's just part of an answer. I'm going to pass the mic, but that's just part of an answer in terms of you've got to have like all the critical roles around it, making sure that it's working. Either Ken or Roger, I'm
Sure.
sure you guys.
I agree. For the last several decades, humans have been the integration layer. We've been sourcing data, inputting data, we've been using tools, we've been working, collaborating, together. Um, and that's changing. We're transitioning now where us as like a domain expert, as a professional, we know the right questions to ask of these new agentic tools that we're starting to explore and implement and to automate the the workflows and the processes that we have to operate our business. And so I think you really just need to train our human teams on these new tools, but make sure to empower them to ask the right questions and to solve the right problems. Again, it goes back to like what problems are you trying to solve? What are the pain points? What are the manual processes that take, minutes out of the day where you can automate it? And then you can even train an agent to oversee agents. So you start to orchestrate agent layers with different roles and tasks and responsibilities. And so I think Diane, you mentioned the org chart. The org chart, you could have an agent org chart too. And you can start to orchestrate the agents as an expert, running your business, start to understand how it's all working together, understanding what data you need, what data you can add, what tools you can now access agentically to automate the workflow that is necessary to solve that task or to complete that task, which ultimately, again, you're solving problems. So you're just trying to unlock efficiencies across your organization, but empower the people on your team to be in charge of these agents and tools. So it's kind of like change management. It's a transition. So it's going to take a little bit of time to get comfortable with what's happening, but the results will start to show where there's ROI. Just prompting and asking questions and getting suggested answers or results is one thing. But now that we're starting to automate workflows, we're really starting to see ROI. And I think that that's something a lot of businesses are getting excited about, but it's also something we have to ease into and not jump 100% in, because it is new and this is a lot of automation could be great, but it also could be creating unintended consequences that you have to then address as well. So you don't want to create new problems, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah, so Ken, you mentioned change management, and I feel like I've actually been reading a bunch about change management because I feel like this is really what it is, this is new technology. It's like when the internet came out, it's like the Industrial Revolution. It's a completely different way to think about how we work, which the real problem is actually the humans adapting to the technology. The technology is pretty good if we use it correctly. And so it's about, getting everybody on board with these changes. And quite frankly, I mean, that's really scary, not only for, the technology aspect, but also like our job, am I building my replacement by building this agent? And I think in any organization, those are really real concerns that should not be swept under the rug or ignored. And in the change management space, one of the most important things is getting buy-in. And when you have the grassroots people helping build the solution, they have skin in the game. They adopt it more. They're more motivated. You get better quality. So as far as going into an organization goes, we sort of canvas everybody's department, everybody's job, ask them what their tedium is, and then we work with them directly to um, build a solution for them. Part of that process is also like, okay, we're going to save this time. What can we do with that extra time? What are the parts about your job that you love that engage you the most, and how can we do that? So you're not just saving time by implementing agentic AI, but you're also unlocking more opportunity as well. And for those people, let's say that there's turnover and they leave. I mean, by creating AI systems within the business, first of all, you're actually kind of building job security a little bit too, because you do know these things and you do know how they work. You do have to have a lot of documentation in place because there's always turnover. That goes back to kind of the data aspect of it and AI governance, which should be surrounding this whole discussion, really. And you know, one of the easiest ways to get started, I think, for anybody, is to actually just go to one of your chatbots, tell it what your job is or what task you have, and actually ask it, like, how do I make this a workflow how can I make this agentic? What information do you need? Here's my spreadsheet. How can you create this? And AI is actually quite good at guiding you to where you need to go. Um, so that's a good way to start. I know, like, from a practical standpoint, I know there's a lot of small businesses on Google Workspace, and Gemini is all over the place in Google Workspace. Just creating, for example, like responding to emails, building, a document that talks about your products and services, giving it another document that has some examples of emails that you've responded to, codifying, how you format your emails, and then have it watch your inbox using Google AI Studio for certain emails, make a decision, and then just simply draft an email. That's an agentic AI. It reads an email, it makes a decision on what the customer wants. It accesses the data that you give it, and then it drafts an email. It doesn't send the email, but your customer service person can look at the draft, determine what needs to be changed, and then send it. That's a great place to start, I think.
Um, just a thought. So Diane, I'm kind of assuming that question is sort of like how do people get from A to D, from not using to using. In the Zoom chat, I just dropped in a block of text about skills. And so at Intuit, we're building agents, but we also are building out a skill library. And a skill is basically like a prepackaged set of prompts, like a playbook. And so it's a little bit easier, I think, in some ways to build out. And that's something that companies can explore if their technology supports it. Like, again, let's say Claude. Um, and then you can use that for a variety of things. Like, hey, I'm going to go market a solution to a contractor. Help me, like, do things and speak to the contractor in a way that makes sense for them. I use it to go verify answers that I get back from AI to, like, hey, level one, I trust the sources, just double check and make sure that, that it's all accurate. And level two, like, show me everything that it's sourcing so that I can make sure it's not pulling, price information from an external website. So it's a little off topic for agentic solutions, but it's also potentially a stair step.
Yeah, it's almost like I like to think of it as the chatbot, whatever your preference is, whether you use, a ChatGPT or Claude, you can add these skills. So it's like the chatbot, that's just the interface to this new agentic web that's emerging. And you can start to augment whatever it is you're doing. And I like to think of the chatbot and the general intelligence layer underneath, like the LLMs, fill in knowledge gaps as you start to work with these tools. So you can add tools. So you can use Claude, and you can any MCP native chatbot, you can start to add these tools and skills like what Jet is describing. So you can create skills, you can make those skills agentically discoverable to all these chatbots that are MCP native. And then through conversation, the responses during the conversation that you're having in this interface will fill in the knowledge gap. So you start to combining tools and skills, you'll start to realize through conversation that you can do things you didn't know possible. And you get to apply your creativity, your unique strengths as a human, you know, to the process. And this whole process under the hood is augmenting your abilities and increasing your output. And so it's pretty exciting just to be able to add all of these tools and skills, and then ask the right questions, and then you'll find that you might surprise yourself with what you can do.
So, Ken, you basically answered my next question in that what is one skill that everyone should consider developing as we're seeing this emergence of workforce agentic AI? And I think what I'm hearing from you too is that you can even go into your AI platform and start asking some prompts. Are there some specific prompts that come to mind? Are there some things? Because if this is the new workforce revolution and we're now competing with agentic AI, but also as the human that wants to have a great job, what are some skills that pretty much everyone should think about developing? Not necessarily that they're all going to go launch a company, but that they should have almost kind of like what Roger said when he was talking about governance, right? So sometimes just like being informed and having that in your tool belt.
I think just real quick, it's about kind of reigniting your curiosity, revisit your imagination, go into it open-minded. And it sounds cheesy, but really just be very curious about what you might be able to accomplish with these new tools. I think that some people might be apprehensive, they might be a little bit afraid, but once they dive in and get familiar, again, you might surprise yourself with what you can accomplish.
All right, my favorite rapid fire questions, and then we're going to open this up to our audience, make sure we give them lots of time for questions. What is one task, and we're going to go through all three of you, what is one task today that you would never hand off to an AI agent? And what is one that you would happily hand off tomorrow? I know that I could answer that question. I am not ready to hand off my engagement with stakeholders and government leaders. I'm not ready to hand that off, but I would happily hand off tomorrow to an agent reviewing all of my emails that get buried in my inbox.
I
Yeah,
mean,
oh,
oh, go
sorry.
ahead. I'll follow.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree with you, actually, Diane. And I think this is also like a very personal question about what your tolerance is. I do not have AI write my emails personally. And I think that as we go forward in this new world of AI everywhere, I think that relationships are going to be the bedrock of, a lot of what we do in our professional careers. And having that personal touch and that personality, and also the cathartic process of writing something out. It helps organize your thoughts. So I don't like AI writing my emails still. And I think that that could probably go for a lot of people in communicating with customers and their relationships. Of course, if you run a business that has thousands of customers all asking the same question over and over again, that's a different story. But as far as something that I would happily offload to AI, uh, I would say calling large businesses and navigating their phone dial systems for me and just getting me on the phone when I connect to somebody, that would be great.
So you want an AI to navigate the AI so that you can get to a
Yes,
human. Just want to make sure I heard that correctly.
that's
Question
right.
for you, Roger, before we move on to Ken
Yeah.
or to Jet is, so you said that you still write your own emails. We had George Mulhern, the former CEO of Cradlepoint, on our last Spark series. He said the same. I think we a lot of our C-suite leaders still want to give that personal touch. Have you ever used a prompt to rewrite your email for clarity or professionalism? Because sometimes I will just brain dump an email. Here's everything I want to
Yeah.
say, but I will use AI to kind of clean it up a little bit.
You know what I do a lot actually is again, I think this is a really practical tip. I'm not like I don't work for Google, but I know a lot of small businesses are on Google and they have a great ecosystem. I take notes for my meetings, and there's usually a follow-up email that I need to write. I'll just dump the notes into the prompt. I do have sort of a project trained up with some context around my business and who I am and my clients. And it will spit out some things. I might copy and paste like a bullet point list that it creates. Um, I do know that there are certain times when you're doing customer service and maybe it's not a great email to write. And AI is really good at finessing some of those difficult emails. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll second that. Like I wouldn't hand off my personal relationships to AI. I don't like to put it in between the connections I care about most within my personal network. Um, However, I will I will use AI as a tool when I need to maybe get different perspective on conversations because sometimes, everyone's different, the communication styles are different, especially if it's communication via text. Um, there might be like the core message might be lost in translation. You might not interpret what the person is trying to get across or the meaning. And so sometimes being like very analytical, I might overlook an emotional part. And surprisingly, AI is very good at helping to provide different perspectives that I might overlook or completely miss in the message. So I if it's really important, I might, take some time just to use AI to kind of sanity check my own thoughts, just in case there's a different perspective that I might not have thought about. Uh, and that's been helpful for me, actually. One thing I will hand off happily is going and canceling all of these subscriptions that are piling up. Like, I don't know how many subscriptions I have, but it's too many. And so tasking AI to go out and cancel those subscriptions for me is something I offload to AI every chance I get.
The worst ones are the ones that make you call in to cancel your subscription. You
There's an
can't just
A
cancel it. Yeah.
there's an AI for that too, though. Like, yeah, they're getting clever too. Like, how do you prevent your whatever service from getting, canceled by agents? They're trying to address that. But
I would I I agree with Roger's point. Like writing something out really forces you into a level of understanding, and there's a thought process that goes with it. And so I would reframe things in terms of talking about my use of AI. I tend to do things iteratively with AI where I'm like, okay, hey, I want to start working on a project and could help me gather information. Great. Now, okay, here's how I want to organize this information. Please make a pass at that. Okay, great. That's correct, but I want to change these things. So my interactions with the AI are not like go do this and then like, okay, I'm trusting you, you've done it correctly or not, um, for the most part. Um, the scenarios where I might just trust the AI sort of get down to maybe two examples. I noted earlier I created a skill where let's say I've drafted up some big technical document for the engineers to go build something, and I've based it on a lot of like there's a lot of integrations with other systems and those types of things. I would use that to go verify like is my understanding and are the timelines and all the details correct. Um, but there might be a document where I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I've got all the information pulled together correctly. Just double check that I haven't missed anything important or some technical detail. And if it's something I using my judgment, I trust, I might say this is a level one check. Just go check it. And let me know if you find anything that's wrong. I'm still sort of working iteratively with it because it's actually doing something for me. But because I've identified it as level one versus level two, where I want to see everything, I'm trusting it. So again, there's always judgment. And then the other one might be, I don't know, hey, I need to put together the education committee notes for ITC. I might have, my friend Diane send me the meeting Zoom and like just summarize and capture it all for me, and then I'll send it out because I trust it.
Yeah, that actually
I
happened this morning.
yeah, I probably still
Yeah.
read it all before I send it, but
Well,
yeah.
thank you so much, Ken, Roger, and Jet. What a valuable Spark series we've held today. We're going to say goodbye to our online audience and turn our attention to our live attendees. But as always, thank you for joining another event of the Idaho Technology Council. Please, we want to meet with you in person and not just via online. So please follow our events on our calendar. We travel the state. We'll be up in North Idaho in October. We've got our Women in Tech in November and the biggest event of the year, the Hall of Fame Gala at the end of October. So with that, thank you so much for joining us today.